Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to AlphaBiolabs breakfast webinar entitled Blood Alcohol Testing, Which Method is Best? It's great to have so many of you join us this morning. Thank you very much for your time. By way of introduction, my name is Andrew Priestley, and I'm the Marketing Manager for the legal sector here at AlphaBiolabs. I'm joined this morning by my colleague, Ashley Hodgkinson. Ashley is our Sample Collections Manager, and she has extensive experience of DNA, drug and alcohol testing in the UK. Ashley will lead the webinar this morning and I will act as the facilitator. Now, we're conscious that you will have busy days ahead of you, so we will keep the webinar to 30 minutes. If we look at the agenda, Ashley will look at the 4 different types of blood alcohol testing with a real focus on the benefits and limitations of each test. We'll then also look at sample collection options in the chain of custody, and there will be a question and answer session. Now, you'll be aware that we're using the Zoom technology this morning for the webinar. That means by default as attendees, your cameras and microphones are switched off. So please do use the Q&A function, which you will have access to ask any questions that you might have. I'll also be issuing some optional polls during the webinar, and there is a short post-webinar survey. Please do complete those because any feedback we get is valuable to us. If you do have any technical issues or anything else, you can also use the chat function, and I will do my best to help you. But fingers crossed, everything will run smoothly for the next 30 minutes. Okay, so to get us started, I'm going to launch the opening poll. It's just one question. Hopefully you can see that on the screen now. The question is, what is considered excessive consumption of alcohol by the World Health Organization? And I'll give you all a few moments just to answer that, please. And then I'll share the result with you. Lots of responses coming through. Let's give you a couple more moments. Okay, so we've got 3 options there. We've got over 7.5 units per day. We've got over 10 units per day, and we've got over 12.5 units per day. There's one clear winner there. I'm just going to end that poll now and share the results with you. So 86% of you say that it's just over 7.5 units per day for a few months. And you'd be absolutely correct. It is just over 7.5 units per day for a few months. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Ashley, and she's going to talk more about that.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. As Andrew said, we will keep this to the 30 minutes. So we're just going to do a brief overview of each test, what the pros and cons are of each one, so that hopefully you will leave this webinar being able to make better informed decisions when it comes to ordering alcohol blood testing, if that is necessarily what your client needs. So the first part that we just covered, the reason why we did that poll was just to kind of check everyone's understanding as to what we're talking about. So 3 out of the 4 tests that we're about to look at are testing for chronic and excessive consumption of alcohol, which, as the majority of you know, we categorize that as 7.5 units per day consistently over a period of time. It's exactly the same as we are looking at in hair testing. So if we do a sample of head or body hair, we're testing for that chronic and excessive consumption, and that's how the 2 link together. So I'm going to refer a couple of times during this to a comprehensive test. And what we say here is knowledge is key. So the more you can learn about someone's alcohol intake in order to make a decision, either on the future of child placement matters or how you want to help them rehabilitation-wise, the more you know, the better, more informed decision you can make. So if you were to ask us a question as to which test would be best, we would always recommend that you did the full package of them together. But in cases where that's not possible to do, we're going to cover the different pros and cons of each. So the first one we're going to look at is, oh, sorry, before we get into it, running away, can't wait to tell you about it. We're going to look at a couple of things today. So we're going to look at how the blood test supports other types of testing, so head hurt, body hurt, or nails. And the reason that they do that is because when you collect that type of sample, you have to allow for a certain amount of growth rate. So the time in which it takes the hair follicle to grow through the surface before it's collected. And that time in head hurt is roughly 2 weeks. So we need a test that covers that middle bit, that allows us to see someone's alcohol ingestion after they've consumed it, but before it's present in the hair or nail or body hair sample. And that's what your blood test is going to do. It's going to bridge that gap. All the tests I talk about today are going to cover 4 weeks. So they all cover exactly the same time frame. So approximately 4 weeks for each of them. And like I say, 3 out of the 4 are just looking for chronic and excessive consumption. So we're not looking at abstinence or single binge drinking episodes for 3 of the 4 tests. If you've used us before, you may know that we used to offer 3 blood tests in-house, the ones I'm going to talk about today, your CDT, your LFT, and your MCV. However, we now are also offering PEth testing in-house. PEth is the most conclusive out of the 4 results, and I'm going to talk to you about why that is. So this is kind of to just give you a bit more information. It's the latest industry development in blood alcohol testing. So we just want to make sure that you are aware of how the different tests complement one another. So the first one is the CDT test, which some of you may have used before, usually ordered alongside an LFT test. So they're always normally done together. CDT is a marker that we're looking for in the blood sample. So when we collect that from your client, and just to clarify, all of the blood tests would be a blood sample, an intravenous blood sample. So we'd be looking for a CDT marker, which is usually present when alcohol is being ingested chronically and excessively. However, it can be affected by a few other things. So if you had a client with liver disease or certain chronic illnesses can mean that the CDT marker is present. You may wish to use an alternative test method so that you're not getting any like false positive results or test results that are influenced by anything else. Because we're looking at chronic and excessive consumption, we can pinpoint single binge drinking episodes. Obviously, if the binge drinking episodes quantify enough to be over 7.5 units a day on average during the testing time frame, then they would show, but we wouldn't be able to specify whether the cause was the single binge drinking episodes or that average. So something to consider depending on what you're looking to ascertain from the results. Like I said, it's not a direct marker, so there are a few other things that you need to consider if your client does have liver disease or other chronic illnesses, and it can't be used on any pregnant females or for 2 months after birth, because the results aren't reliable during that time, so we wouldn't report on results on anyone who's pregnant or for 2 months after. So that's a little bit on CDT. It is a whistle-top store, but like I said, we are trying to keep it within the 30 minutes. So if you do want any further information, obviously we can do that for you outside of the webinar. The second type of test, which I just referred to, is your liver function test. Again, all these tests are covering a 4-week period, so approximately a month. You've probably heard of this, if not in alcohol testing, you've probably heard of it in hospitals and things like that. It can be used for a number of different things, but we're looking at 3 specific enzymes within the blood sample, and that is your AST, your ALT, and your gamma GT, which again would indicate that alcohol had been consumed to excess during the time frame that we're looking at. Again, a couple of other things that can affect your liver function test. I'm sure you can guess around liver disease, things like that. So if your client is suffering from any liver diseases, then again, you may just want to avoid this one and opt for one of the other types of tests. But if not, then this is a good one to have within your comprehensive package. The reason why it's affected by other things, again, is that it's not a direct marker. So although it is a good indication, it can be affected by a few different things. Similarly to your CDT test, it can't be used on pregnant women or for 2 months after birth for exactly the same reasons. Your last one before I get into PEth testing is your MCV test. So MCV is looking at the size of the red blood cells within the blood sample that we collect. Enlarged red blood cells can indicate alcohol has been consumed chronically and excessively. But again, there's a couple of things that can affect this type of test. So things like certain medications that someone's taken, if they have any autoimmune deficiencies, depending on the medication, that could have an effect. Or if they are having any cancer treatments, again, depending on the medication, that could have an effect. And sometimes a vitamin B12 deficiency can also affect this type of test, because any of those things can result in enlarged red blood cells, which is what we're looking for. So like I said before, knowledge is key. The more information you can get on someone's alcohol intake, the better. So we'd always recommend that you do the comprehensive package with all of the blood tests in. But if your client does have certain needs or they are suffering from any illnesses, then you may want to seek some advice from us before you proceed with all 4 of them, just to make sure we're getting the best possible results for your client and it's not being affected by anything else. Exactly the same as CDT and LFT, we can't use this test on pregnant women, and we also wouldn't do it for 2 months after birth. We want to make sure the results are reliable, and we know that those 2 things can have an effect on it. So moving on to PET testing, the newest one, the one that I'm here to talk about the most out of the 3. This is a direct biomarker of alcohol. So this is where we differ from your CDT, LFT, and MCV. So although we do recommend that you do them all together, if you do have a client who does have any illnesses or anything that could affect the other tests, then PET would be the test to go for, because the marker is only present when alcohol has been consumed. So it's not going to be affected by anything else. Because it's a direct marker, we are able to give a little bit more information than the other blood tests as well. So as well as testing for chronic and excessive consumption, we can break it down a little further, which I'm going to come on to in a moment as to how we would report PET if you did go for this type of test. The more alcohol someone takes, the more they ingest, the higher the PET level will go, which is why we're able to give more information on it. And unlike the other tests, this can be used for pregnant women and immediately after birth. So if you do have a client who's pregnant and you think there's no option for us, we can't do the blood alcohol testing, PET is where this would come in, because you would be able to use this type of test on pregnant women or straight after birth. Like I said before, it can be more specific. So we can look at single drinking episodes or binge drinking episodes, as well as your chronic and excessive consumption. PET is also a great test to use if you have a client who is abstinent from alcohol or trying to reduce their alcohol intake. Repeated PET testing can show any patterns or trends in anybody's drinking. So although you may have a client who at the moment is drinking chronically and excessively to a high level, after a number of months, as they start to reduce their intake, you would be able to see that by doing repeat PET testing. Whereas with your other tests, as we are looking for chronic and excessive consumption, you wouldn't be able to see those patterns and trends. So if you did choose to go with a PET test, this is how it would be reported. So we have 3 different categories depending on the level of alcohol present within the blood sample. So we can report to abstinent or very low alcohol consumption. We can talk about whether the intake was classed as social or moderate drinking. And then if it was over that 7.5 units that we spoke about earlier, we can report on chronic and excessive consumption of alcohol within the sample. So as you can see, it's got a lot of benefits. It's the direct biomarker of alcohol, so it can be more specific, and it can also break the results down further. But like I said in the beginning, knowledge is the key when we're looking at drug and alcohol testing. So the more information you can get on a client's use, the better informed you will be. So the comprehensive package is always the one to go to. But if there is anything that I spoke about today that you think, yeah, that's my client, they do unfortunately have these chronic illnesses or are on medications that might affect these tests, please contact us and we'd be able to advise you further as to what the best options are. So just to summarize on your PET testing, it's the most conclusive one out of the 4, which I spoke about earlier, although the other ones are beneficial if you're looking at that overall picture. If you did have a pregnant female or someone who'd just given birth, you could use your PET testing on its own as the only blood test alongside your hair testing as a reliable and accurate result on someone's alcohol intake. And it's not affected by any medication or other health problems. So if you did have a client that was concerned about that, then PEF may be the better option for you. But like I say, get in touch, explain to us what the case is, and we'll be able to advise you further. I've just put together a little table to show the four alongside one another, the comparisons, what we're looking at, the benefits and the limitations, being completely honest, so that you can make the best informed decision for what would be more suitable for your client. But as you can see, they're all covering 4 weeks. So the time frame for them all is exactly the same. And unless your client suffers from any illnesses that could affect the other tests, or they are pregnant or just given birth, then we would always recommend that you do the full comprehensive package. I'm just going to hand back to Andy now. He's going to set off the second poll for you. Andy, we can't hear you.
I do apologise. Just before I launch the second poll, please do keep the questions coming in for Ashley. We can see quite a few coming in. She'll answer as many as she can. I'll just launch the second poll for you. This poll has 2 questions. First question is, have you previously ordered PEF blood alcohol testing? Yes or no? And the second question is, will you consider ordering PEF blood alcohol testing in the future alongside other blood test types? I'll give you a few moments to answer that. Okay, lots of responses coming through. Keep them coming. Okay, that's great. I will just end that poll now and share the results. So we can see 65% of you have previously ordered PEF, so 2/3. And fantastic for the second question, 99% of you will consider ordering PEF blood alcohol testing in the future. So that's really positive. Thank you very much for completing that poll. Stop sharing that, and I'll hand back to Ashley, and Ashley's going to go through some of the questions that you've been asking this morning.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions coming in. Just cautious of the time, so I'm just going to answer 2 or 3, just so that we don't keep you all past 8:30. So let's have a look. Does the comprehensive testing package just include the 3 types of blood testing previously offered, or does it include PET testing as well as the 3 previously offered? Okay, so any of you that haven't instructed us before or for a long time maybe, we offer a comprehensive package on our referral form, and that would include a hair strand test for your alcohol, be that head hair, body hair. So that would be for either 3, 6 or the 12 months. And then as standard, it would offer your CDT and your LFT. And then you can add on your MCV and your PEF as well if you want to. So it's kind of like a bespoke package, depending on what your needs are. The reason why it's not set, so it's all for blood tests and both hair tests, is because we obviously have to account for court orders that maybe only state to do 2 or 3 together. But you can add it in, and it would come as part of that comprehensive package. Let's see. For blood tests that cover 4 weeks, so for all the blood tests, is there any difference in accuracy between, for example, week 1 or week 4, or is it pretty consistent? Now, because it's a blood test and it's covering 4 weeks as a whole, it's a snapshot of the 4 weeks. So it would be the average of the alcohol consumption over the 4-week period. I think I'm answering this question in what you mean, so please message again if not. But it wouldn't, for instance, like segment it on each week. It would be an overall picture for the 4 weeks. So if your client drank to excess in week 1 and then abstained from use for the rest of the weeks, then it would be an average of what they drank in the first week. And this is why we always say do all of the tests together so that you get the full picture of someone's drinking habits. It's better to do them all than just to do one in isolation. If you can do all 4 of them, then that would be the better option. Let's have a look at this. There's more coming through. Sorry, so they keep moving them down.
Well, Actually, while you're looking at that, I'll just answer, there's a common question coming through about getting a copy of the slides today. So just to update you on that, tomorrow morning we will send a follow-up email to you, which will have a recording of the webinar. And also we'll have like a Q&A document as well. So any question that is asked today, as we won't have time to answer them all, we will provide answers to any question that you have on that Q&A document as well. And that'll be with you on our website tomorrow. So please do keep the questions coming in, and we will make sure that we get an answer for you by tomorrow.
There's a few specific ones coming through about certain people's use, or if clients state that something specific has affected the results of a test. We're going to come on to reporting in just a moment, but for any specific questions like that, it would depend on what your client had stated could have affected the testing results. So we're always open to receiving queries once results have gone out, if your client thinks it could have been affected by anything else. But for the questions asking about the PEth test, so things that could have affected the PEth test, because it's a direct marker of alcohol, it would only be present through alcohol consumption. So it wouldn't be like CDT, LFT or MCV, where other things could have had an effect on those results. So if you did have a client who had shown up as a positive result on a PEth analysis, and they'd come back and said that there was other things that have affected it, although we would obviously always be willing to have a look at them and respond to them appropriately, it's a direct marker of alcohol, so it's only going to be present if alcohol is being consumed. So just looking at the time, I'm going to move on from the questions, but like Andrew said, we will post them all online afterwards. I've seen some questions coming through as well about Scram in relation to these tests, so we'll definitely answer those. But if you are interested in the differences of what a Scram bracelet offers versus what blood testing offers, there is a separate webinar that we've done previously, which will also be on the webinar page on our website. So it might be worth having a quick watch of that, and that explains what the differences are. So moving on to the sample collection part of the testing, if you were to instruct us to do this type of test, as I mentioned earlier, it is an intravenous blood. So it would need to be a trained phlebotomist that collected the sample. We have a full network of collectors based all over the UK who can come out to either your client's home, to your offices if you would prefer. We can come to the courts if that's appropriate at the time, if you wanted it doing there. We can come wherever you need us, realistically speaking, as long as it's a private room, to be able to collect those blood samples for you. We also have 11 walk-in clinics based up and down the UK that your client can drop into, and we can collect the samples from there. We would maintain a full chain of custody, as with any legal test that we operate here. So we would take a photograph of the person that presented as your client at the time of the appointment to make sure we've got the correct person. And we would also ask them for one form of identification, and that would be embedded within the report that goes out to you once the testing had been concluded. You are obviously also welcome to be present at the appointment. If you have a client that wants to come to your offices so that you can witness that, that is no problem at all. But we do just ask that it's only one witness at the moment, just due to COVID, so that we can keep social distancing in place. Laboratory and reports that we send out to you. For those of you that have used us before, you will know that we offer two types of reports. We offer a certificate of analysis, which is the data from your testing, with a very small interpretation, or we offer a statement of witness, which is all the information that you could possibly need and all of the background into your results. For me, it would always be the statement of witness that you would want to go for, because all the information that you would ever need would be in there. But if you are unsure what type of report to have, then give us a call and we'll talk you through it. If you do have a client who is suffering from certain illnesses or is on any medications that you are concerned could affect the results, you will definitely want to instruct a statement of witness, because that will include all information about medication and any impact that that may have had on the results. So just to cover this off, if you are interested in instructing us and you do go ahead with it, our turnaround time for this type of results from receipt of samples is 5 to 7 working days. But if you do need it any sooner, we are able to expedite it and have them with you within 4. You just need to contact us and request that service. I'm going to pass back over to Andrew now, but thank you for joining us today. And like we said, we'll answer all of your questions and post them on the webinar page on our website.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Ashley. Okay, so the closing poll I'm going to launch now. It's just one question. Please do answer it. So has your knowledge of blood alcohol testing improved as a result of this morning's webinar? 3 options there. Hopefully we'll get lots of yeses, but please be honest. Lots of responses coming in, and it's looking very positive. Let's give you a couple more moments. Okay, I'll just end that poll and I will share the real results with you. So just over 3/4 of you say yes, absolutely, which is really good. And then pretty much everybody else said to a certain extent, but would like to know more, which is great. As Ashley said, we're more than happy to talk to you on a one-to-one basis about the benefits of PEth and other blood alcohol testing. Just one person said no, it hasn't. So apologies for that. Hopefully, again, if you do require more information, then please do get in touch and we can assist you with your questions. As I said earlier, there are quite a lot of questions that have come in. Apologies that we're not a chance to answer them all, but we will produce answers to all those questions during the course today. And when you receive the email tomorrow with the recording of the webinar, you'll be able to see the answer to your particular question. I will just stop sharing that now. Okay, so just to finish off, we do have a special promotion at the moment. So we are offering 20% off all legal alcohol testing. That is until the end of February. 3 ways you can request a quote from us. You can do it by telephone or email. Please do quote the code ALC20. Alternatively, you can visit the website alphabiolabs.com and you can request a quotation online. So please do get in touch. We are the experts in legal DNA, drug and alcohol testing. Again, I just put there the main methods of contact. If you're on LinkedIn and Twitter, please look us up on there and give us a follow and we'll follow you back. Also, just wanted to mention our Giving Back campaign, which some of you will be aware of. We pledge for every instruction we receive from you, we'll donate £5 to 4 incredible charities who support some of the UK's most vulnerable children and families. It's just another reason to choose us. I hope you found today very interesting. Thank you very much again for your time and enjoy your days ahead. Hopefully we'll see you soon on AlphaBiolabs' webinar series. Thanks very much and goodbye. Please complete the survey before you log off as well. That would be fantastic. Thanks again. Bye-bye.